Last time on Hudrick, Mark was bored. Now the Sixers are tied at 2 games all in a best-of-7 playoff series to decide who goes to the Eastern Conference Finals. Farzy's no longer bored on Hudrick. What's up, Paulie?
I'm so glad you're not bored anymore. It's like I almost want to do the gladiator thing. Are you not entertained? Like that's because this has been a pretty entertaining series through 4 games.
It's like it makes you bipolar. And game 1, you're like, I didn't see that coming. That was amazing. Game 2, Embiid's back. This is great. What version of that version of Joel Embiid? And then what version of James Harden are we going to get there in game 3? Not good. And then game 4. This is incredible. They've cracked the code, right, Paul? All is right with the world. They realize like James Harden's got to be the number 1 scorer, and then Joel Embiid's got to do whatever he can do in a game, still get you 34 points, which is only a season best average. It's wild. I don't know how to wrap. I can't even talk straight when I talk about the emotions of this series, Paul. How are you handling it being so close to the heartbeat of the 76ers?
Well, it's pretty wild that over the course of 4 games, James Harden has been compared to Allen Iverson and Ben Simmons over the course of 4 games. That kind of says it all, right? Like, it's funny. I was, we're all waiting for Doc Rivers to come out, post game, and it was insane post game, like maybe the most circus-like atmosphere I've ever experienced after a Sixers game. And I'm standing next to Gordy Jones, who, if you don't know Gordy, he writes for Liberty Ballers now, does some feature stuff. Gordy's been around for a minute, right? Like Gordy covered the 1982-83 team. Like Gordy's seen some stuff. And I asked him, have you ever seen a more volatile playoff series from a player? And he was stumped. He could not think of a single instance of a player having this kind of fluctuation in their play. And wow. It's insane. I mean, there are basketball reasons behind it for sure. Like their playoff series are so weird in that each game can kind of take on its own identity, beyond the series and all that. But I have never seen anything like this where a guy can look unstoppable for 2 games and then look frankly, he would probably tell you himself, like terrible for 2 games. It's wild. It's definitely an emotional roller coaster. And I have a feeling the Boston Celtics fans are also feeling a bit of that with a guy named Jason Tatum, because his play has been pretty up and down through 4 games. So yeah, it's been a crazy, crazy series. And what version of James Harden they get feels like it might determine whether or not they actually win the series.
It's a weird thing, Paul, because he said after game 4, the effort's always there. The mentality is always the same. The excitement, the drive, the motivation. He claims to not hear the outside noise. I don't believe that when any athlete says it. But what do you think it is with James Harden? Because I think the ability is there, but he's talking about the production not being there. So I think, too, most of the time, at least, those two go hand in hand. What's your take on James Harden and the fluctuation of production?
There's 100% there's mental stuff there. I mean, like that doesn't happen to a guy without there being a little bit of a confidence issue there in those 2 games. Now, some of that was brought on by what the Celtics did. Game 1, they kept switching on him on the Al Horford, and he kept cooking Al Horford, which much to the delight of Sixers fans. And quickly, Joe Mazzulla realized that strategy is not going to work for the rest of the series. So he made a couple really good adjustments. 1 was putting Jaylen Brown on him, and 2 was not switching, making Jaylen Brown fight over the screen, which he's very good at. Jaylen Brown's a very long, athletic guy, very strong guy. He was able to do that through games 2 and 3, and it caused James problems, it just flat out. And then I think the confidence, to me, game 3 was more like game 2, you could almost throw out the window. It was a blowout. These things happen. I think it was 16 straight times now. The road team has won game 1 and then lost game 2. That's 16 straight times that's happened. So some of that was inevitable. Like you felt it coming. So I kind of toss everything out the window in game 2, but game 3, I thought it was a couple of things. Look, I mean, the record doesn't lie when Scott Foster officiates games and James Harden is playing. It's a thing. So I'll say a couple plays early where James maybe didn't get a call. Maybe he thought he should have gotten. Saw Scott Foster there. That leaks into his head a little bit. Couple mid-range shots, which he was so good in the mid-range in game 1. Game 3, he misses a couple of them. And I thought he kind of went into a shell. And that's not to make an excuse. You can't do that. You're James Harden. Like, you can't go into a shell. You're too good. These games are too important. You can't do that. But I give him credit for game 4 for coming out and attacking. And I give Doc Rivers credit, Mark. I know that's like a weird thing to say for people, but like, you have to give him an ounce of credit for making some adjustments, for making sure the Sixers do things like guard switches to make sure that Jaylen Brown is no longer covering James Harden. And just putting him in just more advantageous positions. I like the idea of Tyrese Maxey bringing the ball up the floor, especially if Jaylen Brown's going to hound James Harden full court pressure, bringing him the ball up every time. That's going to take energy. That's going to take effort from James Harden. Just give it to Tyrese Maxey. Let him run the ball up. No one can, like, you're not going to full court press Tyrese Maxey because he's just too fast and he's too good of a ball handler. It's not going to happen. So you have him bring the ball up, gives James a break, starts the offense a little quicker, puts more pace in your offense. So I think all those things were contributors. Less turnovers was good. I think he only had 1 turnover, which is insane when you consider how much he handles the basketball, how much he scored, how much he facilitated on Sunday. To only have 1 turnover, that's pretty incredible. That also helps the Sixers on the defensive end kind of set their defense. I thought that too, like, he was just engaged. He had 4 steals. He had a block. He was more engaged on that end of the floor. He's not the best defender in the world. We all know that, but he has got really quick hands. He's got very good instincts, so he can make plays like that. So I just think he was, I think it's a confidence thing where he felt good early on the game, made a couple layups, made a couple mid-range shots. That got him going, and it was a positive snowball from there of him just continuing to play well.
Speaking with Paul Hudrick, of course, of Liberty Ballers. Also, check out the podcasts from Liberty Ballers as well with our friend Paul Hudrick. Follow him on all social media platforms as well. The gospel song. Let's get into this. First off, if you, and Paul, you know I love you, man. We've known each other for a while. If you send me a song that's 8 minutes, I don't know when I'm going to get to it. Okay, I'm going to tell you this. If it's a couple minutes, if it's 3 minutes, I'll listen to it. But 8 minutes is like a text from a friend, eternity of time to listen to a clip. Okay, essentially, if the way you and I, like, you got to see this clip of the post game thing. If I see it's over 3 minutes, I'm probably not listening to it. But he goes and he listens to the song. What did Doc mean by this song? What was your take on what Doc meant to do by sending James Harden the song? I believe it was called "You Know My Name."
Yes, that is correct. Well, first of all, objectively hilarious to think about James Harden and his pals rolling up to the arena, blaring gospel music that Doc Rivers suggested. James Harden, who is like best friends with Lil Baby, and we all know enjoys a gentleman's club from time to time. This guy rolling up to the arena, to the Wells Fargo Center, blasting gospel music. I'm sorry, but that's just objectively hilarious to me.
That is. And Lil Baby might be, I don't know if they're rolling together or not, but that's even funnier if they arrive together. I don't know.
I didn't even think about that, Mark, but oh my goodness, yes. That would just add to it.
Yes.
He said his crew, he said his homies, so
he did.
It would make sense if Lil Baby was a part of that. But anyway, I think Doc's message was, like, you know who I am. Like, I'm James Harden. Like, you are James Harden, and you are a 10-time All-Star. You are a future first ballot Hall of Famer. You were named one of the 75 greatest basketball players of all time. Like, you don't need to prove anything to anybody. Just be you, and realize who you are. And I think when I talk about like a crisis of confidence, like, that's what I felt like in game 3, where it's like, you can't, like, and that was my thought after I watched that game, was like, he is too good to play like this. He's too good to be kicking the ball out when he's got a pass to the basket. He's too good to not take shots. And like, I talked about the turnovers. He had 5 turnovers in game 3, only 1 in game 4. A missed shot is so much better than a turnover, especially in the playoffs, especially when you have PJ Tucker, who was a madman, constantly patrolling the offensive glass. Like, a missed shot is the better play. And like, I get it, you're James Harden. Like, you don't want to, you don't like Robert Williams blocking your shot or Al Horford blocking your shot. I get that, but he has to do it. And I think he kind of got out of his own head a little bit. The really cool stuff, I'm sure you saw with John Howell, the Michigan State shooting victim.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pre-game, that was so cool. Such an awesome moment. And I do think that's the kind of thing motivates James Harden. I think, I think it just kind of put some stuff in perspective for him. Like, this is a game. I need to have fun. I need to be me. And I think all of that. And I think that was the main message that Doc Rivers was trying to convey. was just be James Harden, because James Harden is a pretty great player with a pretty great track record. So just do that and you'll be fine.
The other thing that we got to talk about before we even get to Joel Embiid and what we can expect from him for the rest of this series, which is at least going to go 2 games now. PJ Tucker, this is why you got him. When you and I talked last about 2-3 weeks ago, we talked about PJ Tucker being that dog. We talked about the fact that he has won. We talked about the fact that the guy has a hell of a resume and he was brought here to put the Sixers over the edge and be that immense chip on the Sixers' shoulder and be that kind of devil in their ear. It literally almost played out in game 4 when he's standing next to Joel Embiid and saying, yeah, we can't have that. You got to be aggressive. You got to go for it. And Joel Embiid even saying that PJ Tucker got on him and he was able to find a little bit extra left in the tank for the later portion of the fourth quarter and overtime. How important and how much credit does a guy like PJ Tucker deserve for being a motor on this team?
I think you're a fan of the show Ted Lasso. Have you watched Ted Lasso? No?
Absolutely, I am, yeah.
Roy Kent and Jamie Tart, man. That's what I get. Like that vibe when he's screaming in Joel Embiid's face. Like it's perfect. Like it lines up so perfect. And couldn't you see, Mark, could you not imagine PJ Tucker, if someone asks him something or says something to him he doesn't like, just growling at them? Like I can see that. I could see PJ Tucker just grunting at a guy that's someone that says something he doesn't care for. But and I think we talked about this when they signed him, when you had me on. I think we talked about it through the course of the year. You don't sign PJ Tucker to beat Charlotte in January. You sign PJ Tucker to win you playoff games against the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference semifinals. This is why this guy is here. Huge offensive rebound, gets that end one. And like you said, he's not even worried about like, I got to go hit this free throw. His first thought is, I have to go yell at Joel Embiid and tell him to be Joel Embiid. Because and I'm like, we're going to touch on the Joel Embiid stuff, but like, yeah, I mean, he is willing his team, and like you need that. They have lacked that. And Doc Rivers said that yesterday. I think it was Marcus Hayes from the Inquirer asked him do you not see it? Do you see a toughness difference from last year against Miami till now? Doc Rivers said, well, yeah, that Miami team had a guy named PJ Tucker on it, and now that guy PJ Tucker is on our team. So like that's the difference a guy like that makes. And there's been no player like this, right? During the entire Joel Embiid era, there has not been a player that has this kind of voice, that has this kind of impact, that has won a championship, that has this kind of, cachet that he can walk around and talk to guys like that and get in guys' faces, and they all take it well. And I think that's a big thing too, Mark. Like, and like I think PJ too has such a good read on guys. Like he knows he can scream and curse at Paul Reed, and Paul Reed's just going to be like, okay, and he's going to take it and he's going to be better. You maybe don't want to do that with Tyrese Maxey because that's not really maybe fitting his personality. And PJ knows that. He said that. So I think he's got the cachet, he's got the attitude, he's got the resume to do that. And I just think he knows what works, right? Like he's just such a good communicator and knowing what works for certain guys. And I think that's so huge when you're talking about a team, when you're talking about a leader, and just that he knows what Joel Embiid needed to hear in that moment, and he did it.
No, to get on the Joel Embiid subject now, we haven't seen someone. Usually it's Joel Embiid calling out someone, whether controversially or not, in a press conference. Rarely do we see it on the court. I mean, the last person I really remember Joel Embiid even getting emotional with was TJ McConnell. You know what I mean? Like it's that far back. But when you look at a guy like James Harden, he got in the ear of Tyrese Maxey. No one ever gets in the ear of Joel Embiid, and PJ Tucker has done that. When it comes to Joel Embiid, though, MVP of the league, scoring champion again, all that. Do you see him getting better as this series? Because it seems like he has gotten better since that game 2, his first game of the playoffs, but game 2, he said he needed to knock off the rust. He needed to play that game before he could come back and get anything close to, forget about MVP level, even all-star level Joel Embiid. It seems like he is getting more and more comfortable. It's a matter of getting that conditioning back at the proper level. Maybe this game 5, he's able to push a little harder. What are you expecting from Joel Embiid as this series go on? Continuously getting better, or do you think what we saw in game 4 is as good as it gets?
I think he's going to continue to get better because I think stamina is an issue because he didn't play for like almost 2 weeks. And when that happens, and he's talked about this many times, like the reason why he hated being load managed so much is because he felt like when he didn't practice or he didn't play, that's when he was more prone to get out of shape. Now he's gotten better with it, and he said that too. Like, he's hired a world-class dietitian in recent years. He's learned how to keep himself in better shape, but nothing replicates the energy and the stamina required to play a playoff game. And they went to overtime too. On top of it, I think he played like 46 minutes. I mean, that's a lot for a guy on a sprained LCL who hasn't really played a ton of basketball. So no, I expect him to get better because I think his wind's going to get better. I think he's going to get in better shape. And the knee seems to be trending upward. Like it seems to be healing. He seems to be in a better place than he was when he came back in game 2. And Al Horford, look, first of all, I don't think Al Horford has hurt Joel Embiid this much since 2019-20.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, Al Horford hasn't had anything for Joel Embiid in recent years. Like, really, he hasn't been able to defend him. And that's the combination of Joel getting better and Al, quite frankly, not being a spring chicken anymore. He's getting older. He's got a lot of mileage on those tires. He's plays a physical brand of basketball. So it's going to take its toll. And I think, quite frankly, that's why, the whole Al Horford elite shooting thing, and he made a joke with Boston reporters. Like, I think part of the reason he's not shooting as well is because he's got to run up and down the floor with Joel Embiid for 40 minutes a night. Imagine your legs, Mark, trying to hit a shot. Like that's a lot. So, and
Jello.
I say
Jello
all this
legs.
to say, I think Joel Embiid getting blocked 3 times by Al Horford has a lot less to do with Al Horford than it does with Joel Embiid. I think Joel Embiid was tired. I just frankly think he was. And I think PJ was just trying to fire up to be dig down, dig deeper. Cause whatever you have, we need it for these last few minutes and for overtime, which occurred. We need you for this. So, I do imagine he's going to get better. Cause I think he's just going to get in better shape physically. I think he's going to be physically, have more stamina. I think James Harden taking on a bigger role and scoring more, kind of like we talked about earlier. I think that's going to help him because that helps him kind of ease into the game. And I think everyone just overlooks his defense. He's been game-changing defensively. And so I think if James Harden is able to score more, Joel Embiid is able to score a little less and give a little bit more effort on the defensive end, in the long run, that might actually help them out. So, it's going to take the whole team because it just does. I mean, it just, you don't win a playoff series because one guy was great, unless you're, I don't know, the Toronto Raptors in 2020 or 2019, whatever that was. I don't remember what year it was, but yeah, I imagine he's going to keep getting better. And I think other guys are going to have to step up too. You're going to need more from Tyrese Maxey. You're going to need more from Tobias Harris. Everyone's going to have to step up.
I agree with you on that. I'm going to ask you a question that Alex Holly asked me yesterday morning on Fox 29. I want to get your perspective. I'll tell you how I answered it, and I want to get your perspective on it. Basically, it was who was the better team. Actually, Mike Jarek asked that part of the question. The follow-up was from Alex Holly. Who's the better team? I said the Celtics are the better team, and Alex said, well, why do you have any semblance of confidence that the Sixers could win this? And I still think the Celtics win this series. But if I was gaining confidence, I'm at the highest point of gaining confidence, obviously, after Game 4. But I believe the Celtics to be the better team. I believe that the Celtics, and this is what I explained, I said, I think the Celtics can play good and win. The Sixers have to play great to win, meaning, of course, the margin for error is much smaller for the Sixers. Is that a fair assessment? Do you see it a similar way? How would you look at these two teams when you stack them up going into the final couple games of this series?
Yeah, it's certainly a fair assessment to say that to believe that the Celtics are a better team. I mean, they won 57 games this year. They were the number 2 seed.
Right.
They went to the finals last year with pretty much the same roster, except you could argue slightly improved with Malcolm Brogdon in the mix. So yeah, I think all of that is fair. I think if you're the Sixers, I'll say a couple of things. One, I think it's a little bit more evenly matched than maybe some people believe. If the Celtics are better, I think they're a little bit better. You know what I mean? I don't think it's oh my God, this Celtics team is unbeatable. It's not the 72-win Bulls or anything.
Right.
Good team. But the Sixers are a pretty damn good team too. I mean, they were the best team in the NBA from December on. So I will say, yeah, I give a slight edge to the Celtics, but I think they're pretty close. I think what the separator is, Mark, and I think if you're a Sixers fan looking for optimism.
I am. Just to be clear, I am.
Right. One, Joel Embiid is the best player on the court at all times. He just is. No matter how you break it down, he's the best player. Through 4 games, I mean, James Harden has been the best player on the court for 2 of them. And I don't see any, and I could be wrong, and it could happen because they're both great players. I don't see a scenario where Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown score 40 points against the Sixers, because I think the Sixers half-court defense has matched up really well with the Celtics half-court defense, where the Sixers have gotten into trouble. And we've heard this, we played this song before. It's transition. And the Celtics are so good. I think, it's been a really big talking point for the Sixers is they're so good scoring within the first 10 seconds of the shot clock. So if your offense is running well and you're scoring and you're getting good possessions, good shots, you're getting back and you're setting your defense up, you got a pretty good shot to slow the Celtics down. It's when you don't run good offense. It's when you allow them to turn the ball over, which they're very good at, by the way. They're a great defensive team. They do turn teams over. So when the Sixers as a team only have 7 turnovers, it really hurts the Celtics because they can't get into that. They can't get into the that fast break transition mode and find matchups they like. Because it's not just about scoring in transition. It's about getting the Sixers when they're not set and finding favorable matchups. That's kind of the bigger part of that. So again, if you're a Sixers fan looking for optimism, I'd say it's that you could argue, not definite. I mean, well, they clearly have, to me, the best player in the series. On some nights, they might have the second best player in the series. So that's where you draw your confidence from, is that the Sixers have 2 stars that have played like stars for the most part. Jaylen Brown, I think, has unequivocally been the Celtics' best player. He's been awesome through 4 games. If anything, I think they should be getting him more involved. Just my take on that matter. And Jason Tatum has been very inconsistent through 4 games. He was great the first half of game 1. He was great the second half of game 4. Other than that, he's been pretty up and down. So, and he struggled against the Sixers in the regular season. So I think that's where you need to draw your optimism from. And then also, Tyrese Maxey, their 3rd best player, quite frankly, hasn't been very good. So you got to expect at some point he's going to break free. He's going to have at least one big game.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you there. And you know what? If you and I are on the same lines of thinking, I think we are, as far as Joel Embiid goes, he continues to get better. I think he does have that game where you're looking at him as the guy that's carrying the Sixers. Not like in game 3 where it seemed like nobody else was out there on the court, but more along the lines of what we saw in their last matchup of the season. I know the Celtics were shorthanded in that, like they were through most of their matchups this season, but I still feel like there's that game where, yes, Maxey goes off and maybe Tobias Harris hits a couple more quick clutch threes that you weren't seeing coming. It really that big game for Joel Embiid where you're talking about that 40 to 50 point game that Joel Embiid could also have. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And I think the Sixers win at least one more game in this series. And I think we're going to end up going 7. Paul, confidence level in the Sixers. I'm not even going to ask you about just game 5 tonight, but just overall in the series, confidence level in the Sixers.
I think I 100% agree with you that these next 2 games are going to get split. How that happens, I don't know. I would assume Boston wins game 5, Sixers win game 6, and we're going out to Boston for game 7. And the thing is, game 7, anything can happen in a game 7. And that's where, to me, Mark, your stars, if they play like stars, that's how you win a game 7. When somebody, whether it's James Harden scoring 40 points, whether it's Joel Embiid scoring 40 points, whether it's Tyrese Maxey digging deep and figuring it out and score, or for the Celtics perspective, Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown going off and scoring 40 points, that's what those game 7s, that's where you need that type of performance. So I'll say this. I don't know what's going to happen because I think it does go 7. And when you get to game 7, it's a toss up. No one knows.
No, but we have known that the fate of game 7 for far too long in Philadelphia.
but I'll say this. This team, they might win the series. They might lose the series. I don't think this is the same old Sixers team because you know what? That same old Sixers team couldn't have won game 1 without Joel Embiid. And I don't think the same old Sixers team wins that game yesterday where they give up a big lead, have to come back to tie it, and then win it in overtime. I don't think the Sixers of last year or years past can do that. So, and I guess that's another place where you can draw your optimism from, is that this team feels different. And, maybe the Celtics are the better team, but the better team doesn't always win a 7-game series. Sometimes if you can just put together 4 games where you're better than them, you win the series. So that's I have confidence that they are going to win at least another game and push it to 7. That's where I'm at.
I'm at least with you there, my friend. I'm at least with you there. His name is Paul Hudrick. Catch him on Liberty Ballers, of course. All their great platforms, podcast as well. Read all his stuff, of course, on Liberty Ballers as well. Paul, always great catching up with you, brother. Thank you so much.
You got it, pal. Anytime.
The great Paul Hudrick joining us on the Rothman North Phoenix guest line from Liberty Ballers.